Today, I'm going to talk about the evolution of Maxie Zeus, one of Gotham's more overlooked and psychologically complex members of Batman's rogue gallery. Maxie is a former Greek history teacher who suffers from a severe mental illness, leading him to believe he is the Greek god Zeus. Traumatized by his wife's death, Maxie retreats into his delusions, using his knowledge of mythology to orchestrate crimes inspired by the gods of ancient Greece. Maxie's menace lies in his monomaniacal delusions and obsession with Greek mythology, which develops as his character journeys from a respected criminal mastermind to a pitiful figure trapped in his psyche. In 1966, a character similar in nature to the future Maxie named King Tut appeared. Maxie shares a notable similarity with Tut in both characterization and thematic function. They both embody a specific type of villain, the delusional narcissist with a god complex, who is as much a performance artist as he is a criminal. Maxie first appeared in Detective Comics number 483, and this initial version of Maxie was both menacing and absurd, a criminal who saw himself as a leader and a god among men. Unlike Batman's other foes, Maxie's motivations were rooted in ideology rather than chaos, revenge, or greed, which added a sense of sad nobility to his character. Maxie's theatricality and intellect define his debut, but his delusions of divinity lay the foundation for his eventual decline into psychological vulnerability. Maxie's subsequent appearances in number 484, 486, and 491 flesh out his persona, what Batman describes as a combination of awesome intelligence and utter madness. Maxie's delusions continue to drive him to assert dominance over Gotham's criminal underworld from within Arkham Asylum, where he claims he is simply resting. These early appearances establish him as a calculated villain, yet his sanity is fragile, making him unpredictable and dangerous. These issues continue to balance Maxie's intellect with his psychological instability, hinting at the fragility of his grandiosity. In Detective Comics number 514, Maxie reappears as an escapee from Arkham. He continues his self-proclaimed godly reign, although his grip on reality remains weak. His crimes become more elaborate, using his ancient myths as metaphors to challenge Batman and reinforce his self-image as Zeus. While Maxie remains a flamboyant antagonist, this issue highlights the instability underlying his persona, making a subtle shift towards his portrayal as a disturbed figure. In Batman and the Outsiders number 14 and 15, Maxie attempts to expand his influence by assembling a group he refers to as the Olympians. These Olympians are not actual deities, but mercenaries and operatives hired by Zeus to do his bidding, often styled after figures from Greek mythology to match his delusions, showing his desire for power and control over others, even as his mental state deteriorates. He's depicted as both a threat and a figure whose delusions isolate him from reality. Maxie's desire for power is undermined by his isolation and delusions, showcasing how his mental fragility limits his potential and alienates him further. In Batman, the animated series, Maxie appears in the show titled Fire from Olympus. The episode examines the danger of unchecked power and hubris, which Maxie embodies. Maxie sees himself above humanity, much like his mythical counterpart, and believes he has a right to rule Gotham. The show's interpretation streamlines and enhances his comic book portrayal by emphasizing the psychological aspects of his character while toning down the absurdity. Through this portrayal, the show made Maxie more than a gimmicky mythology villain, transforming him into a pathetic figure whose delusions of grandeur resonate as compelling and deserving pity. Maxie's most haunting portrayal comes in Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious earth. In this graphic novel, Maxie is part of a riot at Arkham, where he's fully succumbed to his delusions and relies on electrical currents, a side effect of electroshock therapy, which he believes connects him to Zeus's power. At this point, he's frail, weakened, and far removed from his former self. His reliance on electricity symbolizes his decline, a former criminal mastermind reduced to a shell-like figure sustained only by his delusions. This portrayal cements him as an emotive presence in Arkham, representing the broken minds of Gotham's villains. Maxie's reliance on electricity brings to the fore his complete loss of control and marks his transition from a theatrical villain to a representation of Gotham's systemic failures. In the early 90s, Maxie appears in Batman number 470, 481 and 482. He is portrayed as a fading threat, often working from within Arkham. He has become obsessed with Batman, calling him the protector of Hades. His gang members begin to insult and betray him, calling attention to his diminished respect and role in Gotham's criminal hierarchy. Maxie's delusions continue, but these mark him as more of a reminder of his former self than a formidable antagonist. These appearances portray him as more of a pitiable than menacing, emphasizing his decline from an influential crime lord to a marginalized figure in Gotham's underworld. In Robin number 20, 29, and 30, Maxie is a player who often seems a distraction or subplot to Tim Drake's storylines. He has begun seeking the blessings of other more cunning villains like the Penguin, who he believes to be a seer. In these issues, although he continues to influence underlings just as delusional as he is, who attempt to carry out his schemes, his god complex is seen as more of a symptom of mental illness than a legitimate threat to Gotham. By the time he appears in Catwoman number 74, Maxie is once more on the loose, and his mental instability and delusions have significantly eroded his status and authority. The fact that his gang mocks and disparages him accentuates how far he has fallen from his initial position of power and respect in Gotham's underworld. This narrative emphasizes his untreated mental illness, showing that his mental health has deteriorated to the point where he is no longer taken seriously, even by those closest to him. Although he lives on in future Batman comics, in Wonder Woman number 164 and 167, Maxie Zeus's death is an explosion that marks a poignant moment in his evolution, reflecting the decline of his significance as a villain and the culmination of his delusions. Unlike his earlier portrayals, Maxie's end in this issue feels abrupt and almost anticlimactic, suggesting how his once distinctive persona had diminished over the years. Rather than through a grand or meaningful confrontation, his death emphasizes the erosion of his agency and the relevance in the DC universe. Ultimately, his death underlines the irony of his character, a man who sought to elevate himself to the status of a god, but whose life ended in a moment of powerlessness and insignificance. In Robin number 172, Maxie runs an underground casino, emphasizing the theme of neglect and decay central to Maxie's character. His diminished status aligns with the broader depiction of Gotham's failure to address mental health and rehabilitation. Maxie's continued descent into petty crime and his eventual arrest highlights his inability to break free from the cycle of deterioration. It also suggests that his delusions may have been overshadowed by a pragmatic need to survive in Gotham's harsh environment. In Batman Cacophony 1 and 2, Maxie is a secondary character to the Joker, who describes Maxie as the lamest boss in Gotham Underworld. Maxie claims he is trying to rebuild his empire because he is broke and ruined. By this point, he's largely irrelevant in Gotham's criminal underworld. His delusions persist, but they're less menacing, and he's depicted as a broken man lost in his fantasy, unable to reclaim his former power. In Batman Eternal number 16, Maxie becomes a mindless vessel for the Joker. Maxie's identity, once defined by his delusions of grandeur and belief in his godhood, is effectively erased, leaving him as little more than a tool for the Joker's schemes. This portrayal shifts Maxie from being an eccentric, mythology-obsessed crime lord to someone whose mental health leaves him exposed to manipulation and exploitation by more dominant forces like the Joker. Harley Quinn number 39 and 40 reflects a significant moment in his evolution, shedding light on his humanity, vulnerability, and ongoing struggle with mental illness. Harley's attempts to help him and his eventual sharing of his wife's story reveal a deeper layer to his character, one shaped by grief, regret, and a longing for connection, even amid his fractured psyche, making him more pathetic and humanized character. In Harley Quinn number 41, Maxie Zeus's shift to perceiving himself as weak and powerless while imprisoned reflects a profound unraveling of his psychological persona. Being incarcerated strips Maxie of the external trappings that reinforced his delusions, power, influence, and a captive audience. The lack of power and autonomy forces him to confront his humanity and limitations, leading him to self-perception of weakness and powerlessness. In conclusion, Maxie Zeus's evolution from a flamboyant, mythology-obsessed criminal mastermind to a marginalized, tragic figure reflects the changing priorities of Batman comics and the enduring theme of Gotham's systemic failures. Initially portrayed as a unique and intellectual villain, Maxie's character became a powerful metaphor for the struggles of mental illness and the consequences of neglect. His decline, marked by a loss of agency, diminished respect, and irrelevance in Gotham's criminal underworld, is a tragic reminder of how Gotham's justice system often perpetuates cycles of deterioration. Maxie Zeus's journey, while overshadowed by more prominent villains, offers a poignant exploration of identity, vulnerability, and the human cost of untreated mental illness in the chaotic world of Gotham. Maxie Zeus remains a unique presence in Batman's world, a reminder of the thin line between intellect and insanity and the consequences of a city that fails to care for its most vulnerable.